Awesome. It is great to be back. I just want to tell you my story. But my story, sometimes the events are somewhat similar. But you know what? The theme is always the same. The Christian life is about discovering how good Jesus is over and over and over and over again. And for me, it started when I was 16. I had heard a lot about Jesus. I was a Christian, but my Christianity was all in here. It wasn't in here. I knew all about God. I knew that he was good and stuff, but it was all a bunch of religion. It was all a bunch of, this is what you should do and this is what you shouldn't do. Whoa, I almost fell. That's what you shouldn't do. Well, let me tell you, I could stand up here, but anyway, I like it here. I'm into being relaxed, and I'm glad you guys are relaxed. But the Christian life was really about simply doing the right thing and not doing the wrong thing. And when I was 16, everything radically changed. This man came to my church, and he said this. He said, everything you do for God needs to be the overflow of intimacy with God. He said it 3 or 4 times. Everything you do for God needs to be the overflow of intimacy with God. And I remember that afternoon, I went outside, and there was this big river, and I took the afternoon off, and I began to think about, what did this guy say? Because if everything I do for God needs to come from intimacy with God, I got to figure that out. And all of a sudden, I grabbed all these rocks and I started throwing them in this river, just minding my own business. And I started to think about this stuff. And then I heard this voice in my head. And it was this. Hey, Dan, can I throw rocks with you? I remember thinking, what was that, And I kept going with my contemplation. How do you do intimacy with God? How does intimacy with God not be just the guy's story standing up here, but how does it become my story? How does it become my story in my life, where I live, in my mind, in my heart, in my circumstances? And the more I threw these rocks, I kept hearing that voice in my head. Hey, Dan, can I throw rocks with you? Hey, Dan, can I throw rocks with you? And I started to think, wait a minute, God doesn't want to throw rocks. He's the God of the universe. He's got a lot on his mind. Throwing rocks means nothing. But I kept hearing it. So I remember finally stopping and going, okay, God, yes, you can throw rocks with me, but why do you want to? And I felt like God looked down from heaven and said, because you want to. I'm like, that's it? He's like, that's it. And for the first time in my life, I began to discover that Jesus was madly in love with me. He wasn't just in love with me for what I would do for him. He wasn't just in love with me for what I would become. He was just in love with me because he was in love with me. End of story. What do you do with that? I have struggled a lot in my life really believing this concept called the unconditional love of God. Because you know what? It is unconditional, but you better not do this. Yeah, it's unconditional, but don't do that. Yeah, of course it's unconditional, but I should be doing that. On that day, I began to discover it is unconditional. That God loves me because he loves me. And if I want to go for a walk, he wants to go for a walk. That if I want to go to a coffee shop, he wants to go to a coffee shop. That if I want to go to the beach, he wants to go to the beach. That whatever I want to do, he actually wants to enter my world as a friend. Not so he can point a finger. No, he wants to enter my world because he enjoys my company and wants to hang out. Oh my goodness, what do you do with a God like that? All of a sudden, my Christianity wasn't about this trying to do the right thing. All of a sudden, it was this discovery of a real person who really loved me and who really cared for my life. And from that day until today, this has been the discovery of my life. The Christian life has been this discovery over and over and over again that the God of the universe loves me. And this has been my journey. And I'll tell you a few stories from my life, but really at the end of the day, my journey